Good afternoon, everybody. It's Friday again. Doesn't seem 5 minutes since last Friday, and I probably say that every single week, but the time seems to go so quickly. But you are very welcome in my craft room here at Handmade at Home with me, Sally Bowman. So thank you for joining me. If you're watching this on the replay, thank you for making the effort to watch it at a later date. As always, if you have any questions or there's anything Stampin' Up or craft related that I can help with, just get in touch. Well, I'm going to be stamping shortly, but let me first of all just give you a few reminders, and before I even do that, I ought to make sure that I'm looking okay. So let me go across to my other device and see if I'm live. It looks as if I am. Brilliant. So Belinda is here. Hi Belinda, thank you for joining us this sunny afternoon. The weather's not been bad this week. We've had quite a lot of rain, but it's mostly been either at night or relatively early in the morning, and then the rest of the day has been beautiful. It's very blowy, but it's bright. Looking at my window, there's quite a lot of blue sky, and there's still a lot of green in the garden and still lots of flowers because it's actually very mild here. Ali, hi, thanks for joining me. Nice to have you along. All right, so I'd love to know what you're up to this week, or weekend I should say, or what you have been up to during the week even. So type a comment and let me know. Let me give you a few reminders because we're coming up towards the end of the month, and that means that quite a lot of things are about to stop being available or stop happening. So the first of those is that if you've been on the fence about maybe joining Stampin' Up, getting to know some new people to craft with, maybe getting your projects, stuff for your projects, I can't get my words out today, getting your craft materials, let's say, at a discount, maybe going to some exclusive events, maybe upping your skills, maybe even making a little bit of income on the side, if that's something that interests you, but it doesn't have to, then joining Stampin' Up would be a really, really good thing to do. You've got until the 31st of October to join under our very special October offer, where you're going to get an extra amount of products which you can choose for free. So when you join Stampin' Up, it costs £99, but until the end of the month you can choose £155 worth of lovely Stampin' Up goodies, and you're only going to pay £99 for them, and they'll ship them to you for free. So it's a really, really good deal. Don't miss out. I really don't want anybody contacting me on the 1st of November and saying, oh, what happened to that really good offer, because that would make me very sad indeed. So that's one thing that's finishing. The second thing that's finishing is that today is the last day that you can order your Boughs of Holly sampler. I'll very quickly show you what that includes in a minute. But it's part packs of all kinds of things which all coordinate beautifully together, and I've been using them ever such a lot recently. It's my favourite suite, I think, probably in the catalogue at the moment for Christmas crafting. It's lovely traditional reds and greens, but it looks quite modern, so despite the traditional colours, it's really lovely to work with. So I'll show you that in just a minute. And I'm just thinking if I need to remind you about booking for classes, and I'm actually going to look across at my sheet, so I'm just going to move. I'll probably be out of shot. Hang on, I've got something on the wall here and I ought to know by heart, but I've forgotten. No, you're okay. No, next week there are reminders to book. So if you're going to want to come to my November card class, then you're going to need to book for by next week. But hang on, because I've just had the doorbell ring and I think it might be my handy dandy UPS man. I'm so sorry, I'm gonna have to run. I'll be back in a sec. Right, I'm back. I am so sorry about that. Not very professional, but when you're the only person in the house. Sometimes you have to run and answer the door to make sure that your parcel actually gets delivered, and that was the case. So yes, sorry about that. Right, that should be it now. I've been slightly distracted because they hadn't come this morning when I was hoping they would come, and I thought, I bet you they will come while I'm trying to talk to you live. But there we go, never mind. Right, I've seen there's some more comments here. So, but yeah, Belinda says she's had the heating on and off like a yo-yo. Yes, some evenings have suddenly seemed to get very chilly, but in the day it's been lovely and mild. I've had windows open and all sorts. And Maureen is here. She says hello to everyone. You are very welcome, Maureen, and I can see Kay is here as well. So thank you for joining me, ladies. Right, I've completely lost my train of thought. Yes, class reminders. So reminders to book classes will go out next week. I think I told you something wrong before. I'm just having a look. Yes, I'm getting my my dates completely muddled up. Yes, it's the December card class. I really should have written that down, shouldn't I, rather than rely on my memory. The December card class has to be booked by next Friday. Also the December card class by post. Right. So I am now going to turn the camera down, let you have a look at what's on my desk, and I will show you this lovely sweet sampler. So as long as I hear from you by 5 o'clock today, you will be able to order one of these. So let me just arrange everything, and now I'm going to turn the camera down. So bear with me while I tweak some settings. Let's hope they're still here. Yes, they are. You never know what you're going to find with Facebook. They so often take away a button that you've always been using. Oh, and there I am upside down. Let's move that down. Put you over first, shouldn't I? Goodness me. Do you know, it's only a week since I did one of these, and you think I'd never done one before, wouldn't you, from the way I'm carrying on? Probably just need to take a deep breath and slow down a little bit. Right, so now that should be looking a lot better. Everything should be up the right way for you. Get some of the leads out of the way. That's better. Right. So just move my paper a little bit, which I'm hoping I've moved the right direction. Yes, I have. There we go. So I've still got this new setup that I tried out last week, which I think is a little bit better. It's easier for me, certainly, and I'm hoping that if it's better for me, that means it's also better for you. I'm just going to try and clip all these leads out of the way. There we are. All right, so the sweet sampler then, I'll show you the paper first very quickly. So as I said, it's traditional reds and greens. I love to pair this with golds, but you can also add in silver or your glitter and glitter card. So these are the patterned papers. They're all double-sided, and you get 6 pieces. Each one is different. And they're quite traditional subjects. You've got greenery and poinsettias and Christmas trees and berries. This one's like birch bark. It's beautiful. I'll turn that one up that way so you can see the design up the right way. So you're going to get a quarter of a pack of these, and they measure 6 inches by 12 inches. So a quarter of a pack of the paper, and then if you love it, of course, you can order a whole pack of the paper, but sometimes it's just nice to have lots of bits that all coordinate without having to buy a whole pack of everything. And then you have 3 sheets of red card. So you've got Poppy Parade, Real Red and Cherry Cobbler, and then 3 sheets of green. Shaded Spruce, Mossy Meadow and Evening Evergreen, and these are all colours that feature in the papers, so everything's going to coordinate beautifully. And then you do need to have some pretty things, don't you? So I'm going to give you half a pack of the festive pearls. They don't all look like pearls. Let me turn them that way, and I'll try and actually get them under the camera for you to see a little bit better. So these are pearly red and pearly, very pale green. And then these are metallic silver and metallic gold. And that's not showing up very well in the picture, but they are absolutely beautiful. I have got through packets and packets of these. They're so lovely. You're going to get half a reel of this natural woven ribbon. It's a really soft ivory colour, absolutely lovely. It ties really nicely into bows. And if you like a frayed or vintage or distressed look to your ribbon, it frays really nicely as well. And then finally you're going to get a half a pack of the textural elements. So these are laser cut wooden berry sprigs. Try and get that in the middle. There we go. So you can use these as they are naturally and use naturally in the sort of the original colour. They pair beautifully with that ribbon. Or you can colour them. You can bring out your Stampin' Right markers or your Stampin' Blends markers and colour your berries to be red or orange, and colour the stems as well. And they're beautiful. They're very lightweight, so they're not going to add a lot of heaviness to your projects. Okay, so yes, you've got until 5 o'clock if you would like one of these. 5 o'clock today. Just let me know, send me an email. My email address is handmadeathome@hotmail.co.uk. And if you live close enough that you can collect the sampler from my house or at a class, then it's £16. If you'd like me to post it to you, I can absolutely do that. And that will cost you £18.50, which is second class postage in a board backed envelope. All right, I'm just going to try and move that out of the way without dragging everything off my desk because I'm attached with a cable. All right, so today I promised you that we would stamp a one-sheet wonder. Now, in case you're wondering what on earth that is, a one-sheet wonder is when you take one large piece of paper or card, and it could be patterned paper or it could be card that you're going to stamp. And once you have stamped it, if you're going to, then you cut it up and you make lots of projects with it. And it's a really fun way to create. First of all, it's very effective in terms of the time it takes. And secondly, you always get a slightly unexpected element, particularly if you're going to be stamping. Because although you know where you've stamped and you know what you've done, you don't always know quite what it will look like when you come to cut it up, which for me is a really fun thing to do. I do like a little bit of the unexpected. If you've been watching me for any length of time, you'll know that I love random and I love things that don't always come out the same way twice. However, there is a certain amount of planning that you can do, and the one I'm going to show you today is very straightforward, so you can plan a little bit, and then I will show you a second alternative that I've already stamped, and after that I will also show you some projects, or at least I'm going to make some projects with what I stamp. So I've got here a piece of A4 basic white card. So just standard white stamping card. You're going to be adding a lot of ink to this card, so you definitely want to have something that is decent quality. So don't use cards that you've just picked up at the pound shop, no matter how tempting the price is, because you will be disappointed with the result. I'm resting on some scrap paper. I use grid paper because then if I want to use it for measuring or for keeping things straight, I can. But it's also really absorbent, and I'm going to be stamping off the edge of this, so I want something underneath to protect it. I also have a piece of old used grid paper here. You can see it's got all sorts on it, which I'm actually going to use because I'm going to be doing quite a lot of stamping off. So although I can use my grid paper I'm resting on, it's handy to have another piece of scrap paper there. And then I decided on my subject matter. Now you can stamp this with foliage and berries, and I'm thinking Christmas here. Or of course you don't have to go Christmas at all. You can pick flowers perhaps, or patterns. There are all sorts of things you can do. You can even do it entirely with words. I am going to do snowflakes because I'm working on Christmas things quite a lot of the time now, because if you're making things for Christmas you will know that it's no good starting in December otherwise you don't get enough things finished in time. So I thought, okay, snowflakes. So I dug out my snowflake stamps. So I've got Joyful Flurry here, which is fantastic. We've got 4 snowflake images here, as well as this little dotty one. And then I also dug out Season of Chic, because we have a really nice snowflake in here. And we've also got a couple, or in fact 3 texture stamps. I'm going to use this one as well. This is a great stamp set because look, you've got all seasons in there. You've got spring with the flowers, summer seashells, autumn leaves, and winter snowflakes, as well as some nice words and these really nice texture stamps. So it's a fantastically versatile set, but I'm just going to use the snowflake from that. And then I'm also going to use the word joy. This is in Brightest Glow, and I should probably use some of these to finish my cards with, but that word there. And I'm also using Let It Snow from Joyful Flurry. So if you saw my Facebook event, what I suggested was that you gather together several image stamps with some kind of a theme. They might be flowers, in my case they're snowflakes, they could be leaves and berries. I also suggested that you find some texture stamps, so I'm using these dots here, and I'm using this one here, and some words are nice. They can be words that you can read, or they can be words that you can't read, sort of distressed typeface or script, things like that work really well. So once you decide on your subject matter, you can pick your ink colours. So I have 6 ink colours here. It's really great to have quite a few colours, at least 3, and then the top number, well, frankly, the sky's the limit. Try and make sure that they're all related in some way. So if I was doing foliage and berries, I would pick greens and I would pick reds, maybe some orange as well for the berries. And I would probably try and pick my greens that were either sort of yellowish greens or bluish greens, although that's not to say that I wouldn't throw in one of the others. If I was, let's say I picked bluish greens, I might pick a yellowish green as well, just to add a little bit of zing and some accent and surprise to it. So for this, I've picked blues and purples. So let me try and put them in kind of order of intensity. There we are. So I've got Starry Sky, which is quite a dark blue with just a slightly purplish tone to it. Orchid Oasis, which is not as dark, but definitely has purples to it. Pacific Point, which is quite a bright blue. Balmy Blue, which is a paler blue. Highland Heather, which is a lilac colour. And Fresh Freesia, which is quite a pinky purple. So those are the colours that I'm going to use. I could, if I wanted to, I'm not going to today, but I could also add Versamark ink and maybe some silver heat embossing. That would look beautiful too. Then the next thing I'm going to do is try and make a little bit of space. You can only see a little spot of my desk, a little patch of it. But believe you me, I've got stuff everywhere. Let me move to the back, the things that I'm not going to need for the moment. Because what I'd like to do is kind of arrange these around me. And I'm going to lay onto them the images that I'm going to use in which colour. So this is my largest snowflake. I'm going to use this in Balmy Blue because that's a kind of a mid colour. If I use this in a really dark colour, even if I stamp it off, it's going to be very, very dominant, and my eye is going to keep going to this because it's so large. So I'm going to have that in a more mid-tone. Then this one is also quite a large snowflake. I'm going to use that one with Fresh Freesia. Again, a fairly pale colour. This one is, I don't know quite how to explain it. It's a very, very finely drawn snowflake. So if I compare it with that one, for instance, or even actually this one might be better if you can see that. I don't know if you can see that one. Let me try and get them on the camera. There we go. On this one, the lines on the image are much more finely drawn. So I can use this on a darker colour without it being just too intense. So I'm going to use that with Pacific Point. And this one I'm going to use with Orchid Oasis, because again, it is, even though it's not as finely drawn as the one I just showed you, it is quite finely drawn. So Orchid Oasis is quite an intense colour, but there won't be too much of it with that. My smaller snowflake I'm going to use with my darkest colour, which is Starry Sky. So again, because my eye will be drawn to the darkest colour, so I'm going to use the smallest image for that. And then my two texture ones here. This one I'm going to use with Highland Heather, just because that appealed to me. And this one with Fresh Freesia. Then my two words, I'm going to do Joy in Highland Heather and Let It Snow in Orchid Oasis, for no particular reason other than I thought that would balance out the colours nicely. So I'm going to bring back my card. Let me just check the comments. Yep, Kay says good afternoon to everyone, and afternoon to you too, Kay. Right, the other thing, about your colours of ink is that, of course, when you stamp it off, you can actually get darker and lighter shades of the same colour. So if I show you with Starry Sky and my scrap paper, so this is straight from the ink pad, but then if I keep stamping, I've got the same colour, but it gets paler and paler, and depending on the intensity of the colour, you can get 3 or more impressions with it. I'm hoping you can see that. There we are. So I'm going to use that as I stamp. And I'll try and talk you through what I'm doing as I do it. This is another one of those techniques where you'll probably get a better result if you don't think too hard about what you're doing. So I am thinking a bit about what I'm doing, but mostly the thought process is beforehand. So I'm thinking about my images, I'm thinking about which colours to use with them, which images will be better on lighter or darker colours. And then after that, as I'm actually stamping, I don't think quite as much about it because I much prefer the random effect I get. And if you want to see somebody who has totally mastered stamped one-sheet wonders, look up Ruth Trice Magnus on YouTube. She's a UK Stampin' Up demonstrator. She's a lovely person and she's amazingly talented at these. It's incredible just watching her work. So you can certainly have a look at her for a lot of inspiration too. Right, so I'm going to end up cutting this card into 4 pieces and make 4 Christmas cards with it. So I'll basically cut it there and cut it across. Now it won't be quite like that, they'll actually be smaller, and I'll end up with some scrappy strips which I can use for decorating either my envelopes or my card inserts. But basically I'm thinking of this as something that's going to be cut into 4. And I'm going to want my stamping on my smaller pieces, so let me just bring in a couple of bits of coloured card, just pretend that I'm blocking these off. There we are. So if I put these like this, that's very roughly, that's 1/4 of my card. So when I come to put this onto my card base, I want some space for a sentiment, and I want my stamping basically focused on mostly 2 sides, so either the left and the bottom or the right and the top, and then some white space. And I can get that effect by stamping in a cross on here. So if I stamp across the middle, a band across the middle and a band down the centre there, then when I come to cut it up, I will get that effect of stamping on roughly 2 sides. It's not the only way to do it, and I'll show you an alternative in a minute when I've done this. Belinda's saying that Ruth's work is amazing. Yeah, it absolutely is. I think it's time to get started now and just give you a feel for what I'm talking about. So I'm going to start off with my biggest image because I find that's the easiest way to do it, and I'm using Balmy Blue ink. And I'm going to start off with ink straight from the ink pad, bearing in mind that I'm going to focus on stamping down there and across here. So I'm going to do a few impressions like that, and I'm going to do more, but I've just stamped that whole image once, and I've already shown you the generational stamping where you can get more than one image from one inked stamp. So let me just stamp this a few more times. Getting much fainter as I go. Right, now I'll re-ink it. Let's do one there and off there. When I stamp off the edge, I don't then re-stamp, because what's happened is I've taken the ink off part of the stamp, but the other part of the stamp has more ink on it because it hasn't been taken off in the same way. And then if I stamp this down, I will get an impression with some areas of the image will have more ink on than others, and that will not give me the effect that I'm looking for. There we are. And I'm going to be doing a lot of over stamping on this. So I've just inked this. I've stamped off once because I want some more paler images. And I can come back with this stamp later and stamp some more. Okay, so Kay is asking about Ruth's full name. Oh, brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, Ali. That's really helpful. I'm sorry the sound is coming and going, Kay. I hope it is your end rather than mine. Mine has been okay recently. I've done quite a lot of microphone testing recently, and my microphone is working fine, although when I upload things to YouTube via Facebook, that's where there is a problem. But that is a Facebook issue that unfortunately I can't do a lot about. All right, so I've got stamping across the center and stamping down the middle. So now I'm going to take a different snowflake. I've got Pacific Point ink, and I'm just going to again do some random stamping. So here I've stamped off the edge, so I'm not now going to continue stamping. I'm going to re-ink my stamp. But once I've taken some of that ink off, I can keep stamping as long as I've stamped an entire image. There we are. And it looks, I don't know, pretty messy to start with. You look at it and you think, okay, so what is happening with this? But it improves. And I tend to work from larger stamps to smaller stamps, and then I come back and tweak. So this is Orchid Oasis. This is quite a strong colour, so I don't think I'm going to actually stamp it straight from the ink pad, at least not yet, not unless I'm sure that I could do with that intensity of colour. And sometimes I stamp it and you almost can't see anything at all. But those little tiny, really, really faint amounts of ink really adds to the effect when you get going. So, I mean, here we've got some really, really faint areas. And once it's finished, you get a huge depth of, a really, I'm trying to explain this, depth of imagery, I suppose, is the way to explain it. I'm trying to fairly evenly distribute the colour and the stamps, and I turn the stamp round. And again, I may come back with that. While I've got that ink pad out, I'm going to use Let It Snow. So again, let me test and see how dark that's going to be. That's quite dark. Yeah, I think I like the second generation better, so I'm going to stamp it off once first every time. Now with words, I really like them to be straight. They don't have to be. That's just me. And if you stamp them several times, they do become a textural element in their own right. Once the ink gets so faint that you can't really see what it says anymore, then it's more of a texture stamp. There we are. So again, I may come back with all of these. Right, so I've now got fresh freesia ink. So this isn't too intense, this colour, so I'm going to use some of it straight from the ink pad. That went off the edge, so I'm now going to re-ink it rather than carrying on stamping. And now I just want some paler imagery. So I'm going to stamp off straight away. And now I'm going to bring in this texture stamp. This is quite a solid stamp, although it's textured, which I think is quite dominant if I stamp it with ink straight from the ink pad, so I'm actually going to stamp it off once. Hi Mary, don't worry, you can always catch up anything you've missed by watching the replay. Stamp with a very definite shape to it, so I'm turning it round as I go to make sure that that shape isn't the same each time, otherwise things start to look a little bit regimented. And hopefully you can start to see now that I've got a very definite cross forming straight down the middle and then straight across there as well. Actually, I must bring in this scrap paper I had because my grid paper is getting very inky there. Alright, so again I may come back to that. Let's bring in my smallest snowflake and Starry Sky. Now you can see how bold that is. If I had used this large image in that, my eye would constantly be going to that snowflake rather than looking at anything else. So you can certainly use bold colours, but be cautious. Use them with smaller images. Again, I've stamped off, so I'm not going to re-stamp with that. I'm going to re-ink it instead. So I'm doing lots and lots and lots of generational stamping. So stamping and then re-stamping and stamping again without re-inking the stamp. And that's what gives this a lot of interest, a lot of depth. Pick that up and show you. I think I want a little bit more here. What you can also do is kind of squint your eyes a little bit. And if you squint your eyes, you can see what jumps out. So when I squint my eyes, these little snowflakes in the full strength Starry Sky ink jump out at me, so I can kind of see if I've got an even distribution or not. And I need another one over here. And something else up here. There we are. And that's a little bit more balanced now. The other thing you can do is turn things upside down. It doesn't matter quite so much for this because this will work, you know, either way round, except for the words. If I hadn't put on the words, it wouldn't matter which way round it went. But if you're stamping something and you're trying to see if it's balanced, if you turn it upside down, then your brain stops trying to read things and see it in the same way, and you can often then see if one area is imbalanced by colour or images, and then it's easy enough to correct. Right, what haven't I done? I haven't done any Highland Heather. So I've got this word joy. Let me just see how dark my Highland Heather ink is going to be. Not too bad, not too strong. So this word is actually on the diagonal anyway, so I don't have to worry quite so much about keeping it straight. Went slightly off the edge there, so I'm not going to stamp again if I do that. And now I'm going to stamp off once, so I'm going to have less ink on there. And just add a little bit. And then the last image that I haven't used is this spotty one. Yeah, I'm going to stamp this off at least once each time. It's quite strong otherwise. Where's my scrap paper? There it is. So again, I'll stamp off once, and then I still probably get 3 impressions from that ink before there's absolutely nothing left. And again, I'm turning the stamp so that shape of dots isn't repeated in exactly the same way everywhere. I'm just doing the squinty eye thing again, just to see where I might need some more dots. Alright, and I think I am just about there. So it's very soft. There's lots and lots and lots of detail on there. But I do really like that. So I'm just now going to look overall, squint my eyes again. Is there one area that's much darker than the other or much paler than the other? And actually this bit here doesn't have as many layers on it, so I need to do something here. Is there anywhere where the colours need balancing? That's the kind of thing I'm looking for. So I think I'm going to come back with this big snowflake, stamp off once, and then stamp that in there. And I'm going to come back with Orchid Oasis and do a bit there as well, because there's definitely less there. Fewer snowflakes here than there are elsewhere, so let's stamp that off. Yeah, stamp it off once. And then one of the other ones, I'm not sure which one. I think it needs that littlest snowflake with Starry Sky, but again stamped off perhaps twice. Put one in there. There, that's better. It can be difficult to know where to stop. But I think I'm there. I think I'm going to stop now. I'm going to move all these inky stamps out of the way. Let me just, if I can, turn my grid paper over so all my excess ink isn't fighting with what I've actually just stamped I have this glued to, not glued, blue tacked to the table so it doesn't shift too much. Right, let's just swap that round. And then I think my sheet will be easier for you to see. There we are. So the next thing to do is to cut this up. So let me reach my trimmer. So when I'm making cards, my standard layers, my stamped layer will be 5 1/4 inches by 3 1/2 inches. So I can either cut this up straight like that, which I think is going to work, or I can cut this exactly down the middle and down there and then trim it up from that. But I think this is going to work if I just go straight to 5 1/4 inches there, and then 3 1/2. There we are. So here are my first 2 pieces for card fronts. Oops, something goes up that way, sorry. Here we are. So they were actually sort of like that. I've taken this piece, there's a piece out of the middle, there we are. That piece has come out of the middle. But I've got this L shape of stamping on here, which I could have done just on a single small piece of white, just like this. But it's much easier, I find, to do a large sheet, plus you get 4 done in one go. And now if I look at that and I think, it's needing a little something, I can then add to it. I'll cut the other piece up in a minute. So for instance, I think I would like one of these dark snowflakes over here. So I'm just going to add that in there, and I probably want one of those over there somewhere. But other than that, I like it. I will stamp a sentiment in that big white area of space. But let's cut up the rest of it. This piece will be perfect to include on my insert. So let me cut that up. If I cut that at 1/2 inch, I've got a beautiful piece that could be patterned paper, look. And let's cut, there we are. So there's 2 pieces for my inserts. And then let's cut this. So let me do this the other way. So if I cut this in half, that's given me 2 pieces which are the same, and they were joined together like that. So I can now trim these down. So let's say I want a little bit more of the pattern than perhaps I had before. Maybe I want more on the left hand side and a bit less at the top. So if I want this to ultimately be 3 1/2, I can do that. And then instead of chopping it off like that, I can chop it off like this. So you can play around with how much of the patterned sections you cut off and how much you leave in place. Ooh, I've just knocked all those pieces on the floor, never mind. So same again, if I cut this to 3 1/2, and this time I might just cut a little bit off there. And then cut it to 5 1/4. Even a little bit more, I think. I'm just looking and playing with it really until it feels balanced. that's my 4 pieces to use as card fronts. And I've got all sorts of scraps and strips here, bits and pieces that I can use for decoration. So there we go. So let me start off by stamping a sentiment on there. So I'm going to bring in my brightest glow stamps. And I want to use this big Merry Christmas, I think, because that's about the right shape to fill in those gaps nicely. And I'm going to use Starry Sky, which is my darkest colour for that. And I've forgotten to give myself an extra block, so let's just take that snowflake off and add the Merry Christmas on. I'm just going to do a test stamp and make sure I've got it straight on the block. Yeah. That. And if you don't want to be sending cards that are going to need a large letter stamp on them, this is a great way of creating a really detailed card, but this is still only one layer of card thick. Now, I almost certainly will add some bling and maybe even some ribbon to this, so they may not end up as standard postage, but you don't have to do that. So these are all stamped now, so let me bring in some contrast card and let's decide what will look nice behind them. So I pulled out a sheet of card in each of the colours that I stamped in, plus some thick white here. So let's just have a play around, and actually I'm going to move these stamps right out of the way because I'm in danger of laying that nice clean A4 card across my inky stamps. Alright, so when I'm playing around with design, this is often how I do it. So if I lay this on Starry Sky, it's a lovely contrast. It's the same colour as these darker patches of ink, which means that it's nicely coordinated. And that would be kind of a standard border, or I could cut it so I've got a really narrow border. You can play around with that. And then what do I want for my base layer? So different things will look really different. So if I pop it on Fresh Freesia, then that gives me one look. Or if I pop it onto, I'm just trying to reach a piece of the white. Completely different. I don't think I want the white if I'm going to use Starry Sky. I think it's too much of a contrast. So what else have I got? So this is Orchid Oasis. So I quite like that. With maybe just a very narrow border. Yes, I think I'm going to go that way. So my contrast card layer. Can't see what I've done with my, there it is, there's my Sharpie. My contrast layer is usually 1/4 inch different, but this time I'm going to do 5 3/8 of an inch by 3 5/8 of an inch. But normally I would do 5 1/2 by 3 3/4 of an inch. So this one will give you a really narrow border, and this one will give you a wider border. So let me cut that now. Now I'm actually going to cut this at 5 1/2 which will give me 2 contrast layers, 5.5 by 3 3/4, and then I'm going to trim one of them down. So that one, which actually measures 5.5 by 3 3/4, I can use for that, or I can trim it down if next time I want one that's that size. So that's my spare piece, which is in a usable format now, but this one I'm going to cut to 3 5/8, which is on this 2 of the little dashes past the middle one, and then this is 5 3/8, which is 2 dashes before the big one for the middle. Belinda's saying a narrow silver border would work too. Yes, I think that would be lovely, Belinda. Definitely. There we are. So that's going to give me a really narrow starry sky border. And then for my card base, I'm doing a landscape card base this time, which means I want it to be 11.5 inches by 4 inches. And then I'm going to score it at 5 3/4 of an inch. I hope you can read that. I'm waiting for some black markers to come. So it's in red, which isn't ideal. And it's not my biggest writing, but I'm hoping that you can see that. So I've just cut my A4 sheet at 4 inches, and I'm going to cut it at 11.5 and score it at 5 3/4. There we are. And I must just have some water. I'm thinking, why is my throat so sore? It's because I haven't had a drink for nearly an hour. And I've been talking. All right, find my bone folder. Right, so let me lay these out for you and then I will glue them in place. There we are. Now any of these pieces I cut will work with this. The colours are all going to coordinate. But I will do one more that's slightly different, just so you can see the different options and what they look like. There we are. So even this one, which has got much more stamping, this will work as well. Let me go back to the one I was doing. Using this liquid glue means that I can slide my stamp layer and get that really narrow border even all the way round, which would be harder with anything else. There we are. So that's that. Now I've left my rhinestones the other side of the room, but I will probably have to go and get them. However, I do have, if I can find them, I've die cut some snowflakes from glimmer paper. There they are. So this is the pack of real red and white glimmer paper. So you've got the red and the white in there. So I die cut some snowflakes. Some of them are from the snowflake dies that coordinate with the snowflake stamps, the frosted flurry dies, and some of them are from the chic dies, which coordinate with the season of chic. I've also got some cut from silver foil in here, so I thought that they might work to go over the top, so let's have a look. So I've got some foil ones which are nice, and they would be particularly good, I think, if I had used a foil layer behind, as Belinda suggested. But I'm going to use, I think, the glimmer paper ones. So I've got three sizes, yeah, 3 sizes of snowflake here. These are really good if you cut them with the adhesive sheet on the back, but I didn't because I didn't think about it. I think I said that last week, didn't I? It would probably take more than one pass through the machine as well, because it would just add a little bit of thickness to the back. These aren't too bad to glue. And I am going to have to get up and get my rhinestones, I think. I think a snowflake card has got to have a little bit of rhinestone on it. I don't want this to line up exactly with that one. I think I'm going to go back to where I thought of first time round, which is just there. There we go. And actually I think I need some more. Right, so I'm just going to go and grab my rhinestones. I can see them, but I can't reach them while I'm plugged in, so bear with me a second. Right, I also picked up the bits that I dropped on the floor. Okay. So I'm thinking a few of these. Oh, Belinda's the same as me. She says so many times she's forgotten to put a adhesive sheet on the back when it would have been useful, and then thought about it afterwards. Yeah, I think I probably just need to leave it out on my desk or something so I don't forget, because it is fantastic stuff. It just turns everything that you're gluing down into effectively a sticker. So I'm just going to add a few of these. So I've added some into the centres of some of the snowflakes, and I'm just going to scatter a few others, aiming to put down an odd number of them, because that always looks better than an even number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, one more. There we are. So I haven't done an insert for that, but when I do, I've got lots of spare bits to pop on there, and I've just seen it's 3 o'clock already. Where did that hour go? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you finally another sheet I've already stamped, and just show you how that's a little bit different and how that one looks when you cut it up as well. And then I will probably finish these cards off at the weekend and add them to my stash. I send a lot of Christmas cards, so it's really nice to have started working on a decent number of them. So I'll set that aside and show you that one again in a minute. And here is another piece I've stamped. So can you see the difference? On the first one I stamped across the middle and then down the middle the other way. On this one I've stamped across here, down the ends, and then across there. So all the way around the outside plus across the middle. So let me cut this one up now and we'll see how it compares. I've used exactly the same stamps, I've used exactly the same colours and exactly the same technique. So I'm cutting this at 5 1/4 inches. And then I'm actually going to cut it in half, which is 4 1/8, and then decide which ends I want to trim off. So I do like having this here, so I've actually got pattern on 3 sides here, but that could be a little bit narrower, so I'm going to take a little bit off that. Like that, and then I'm going to take the rest of the width off the bottom. So this needs to be 3 1/2 in total. There we are. So that's that piece. So I've actually got my stamping on 3 sides there instead of 2. So let's cut this one as well. So same again, I think I'm going to take a little bit off there. Cut it conservatively. I can always cut a little bit more off. And then if I cut it at 3 1/2 now, which is my final finished width, is that going to look about right? I think it is. There we are. So there's another one. So I have these 2 pieces plus some lovely scraps. And let's do the other half. So this is my other half a piece. Now, I'm going to cut it down to 5 1/4 wide. There we go. Which, if I do that, is going to cut off this bit here. So I'm really going to only have stamping top and bottom. So I actually want to retain this width. So let me turn it around that way. So I'm cutting off this side. There we are. So now I'm going to cut it exactly in half at 4 1/4, which is interesting. Not 4 1/4, 4 1/8 is what I meant to say. And actually, I obviously haven't gone very centrally here because I've got much more stamping on one piece than the other. But that's okay. Right, now let's correct the width. So I want it to be 3 1/2. We'll take the rest off there, and that balances it a little bit more. And Belinda says she prefers this stamping pattern because she likes the pattern on more sides of each piece, but either is pretty. Yeah, and you can play around, and if you're going to cut this into smaller pieces, then you can actually stamp more. So this one was all the way around the outside and then across the middle, but you could also then put in a couple of vertical panels if you were going to cut it smaller, so that you had more stamping. And of course you can always come back and add some more stamping. You know, there's no rules that say you may not add another stamp to this. If you decide it needs something, then you can add some. If you want some more stamping down a whole side, you can do that. There are no rules. Right. So this is going to end up at 3 1/2 inches wide. So I'm just gauging how much image I want at the bottom, probably about that much, and a bit more at the top. There we are. All right, so let me show you those 4. So I still have plenty of room to stamp a sentiment. And of course, you know, you can wrap ribbon round, you can add lots of bling, you can go through, I haven't had time to use them, but you can go through your leftover die cut pieces, which I've got in my bucket here. Let me find them and show you. when I die cut banners and things, I usually end up with some spare ones. So you can add some of these on there. Obviously you can die cut them specially as well. I just think it's a really interesting way of coming up with stamped pieces that you can stamp in one go and then cut up, so that saves you some time, but also you get these really unexpected results. And I just love the way the imagery sits on here. It's so pretty. And with all the layers of stamping, I just think it's beautiful. And it doesn't matter which images you pick. I could have picked flowers and stamped this with flowers, and it would still have looked lovely. So Ali says she's really enjoyed stamping this. It's taken her out of her comfort zone. She also watches Ruth and has been to her face-to-face classes pre-COVID. Well, that sounds like a treat, Ali. Maybe you'll get back to them. I don't know. Don't know if Ruth has gone back to face-to-face classes, but I'm really glad you've stamped along this afternoon and had some fun. Sometimes going out of our comfort zone, although it feels a bit strange, is a fun thing to do. I'm just having a quick look. I don't think I've missed any comments. Okay, so I'm now going to bring the camera back up and say a proper goodbye to you, and I'll also tell you what we're going to be doing this time next week. Right, let me just find some tape to put over this time. Otherwise, you'll end up seeing me upside down like the first time. Nothing is not professional. Okay, I'm not sure if I might still be upside down actually, because my nail skidded over the button. Yes, I am. So it did register and I didn't think it had. So then I did it again and I was upside down again. So it's all fun and games here today. Lovely. All right. So thank you so much for joining me. I've really enjoyed having you. I will be back here next Friday, which is the 4th of November. Unbelievably, it's November. Let's hope this nice weather continues. And I'm going to be looking at some brand new products which are going to be available from the 1st of November. So I'm going to be looking at the fitting florets, stamps and dies. There's coordinating paper and other things which I will tell you about. And I'm going to be making some cards with those. The dies in particular are fantastic. So I think you're going to really enjoy that. I will look forward to seeing you next week. Have a fantastic weekend, whatever you're doing, and thank you so much for joining me. As always, if you can like and share this helps get me seen by people who might enjoy what I do on a Friday afternoon but don't know about me yet. And if you're watching on YouTube, then subscribing means that you will always get you'll always be able to find my content really, really easily. And if you want to be told when there's a new video, you can click on that little bell signal, which will send you a notification when I put a new video up. So that's all that admin-y stuff done, and I'm just going to say bye-bye and have a good weekend. Thanks so much for joining me. Bye-bye.